Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, whenever you happen to be watching this. My name is Marty O'Shea, your Superintendent of Schools, with another edition of the Superintendent's Corner and another in a series of periodic video updates for the community. So to begin, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy Memorial Day weekend. It looks like the weather is going to cooperate for us, which is great. And during this time when we're all making great sacrifices, this Memorial Day weekend presents us with another opportunity to think about the sacrifices that the men and women of the armed forces have made in our defense. So with that, I wish you a great Memorial Day weekend and appreciate you tuning in right now. In advance of this broadcast, I had solicited some questions from community members, asking them if they had any pressing questions that they would like me to address. And so I thank everyone for sending in some questions. There was quite a few responses, and if anything that you've asked was not addressed in this broadcast, feel free to reach out via email to the appropriate administrator, and we'll try to get you answers to your questions. So there's a few things I'd like to hit today. One is sort of the current status of remote learning in Long Meadow Public Schools. I'd like to chat a little bit about graduation for the class of 2020. I'd like to touch on the FY21 budget, and then finally look into the crystal ball and think with you about what next year might look like. To begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about the current status of remote learning and appreciate the questions that came in. I think one of the feedback that we have received from parents is that they value the video-based engagement, and so we have asked staff to explore additional opportunities to use those video-based tools. I think those help obviously with academic engagement, but just as importantly, they help students with the social emotional ties to their teachers and to their classmates. So we have seen the number of educators that are using video-based tools increase. We can monitor the overall usage, and it has steadily grown since we closed back on March 16th. So that's encouraging. I would note that, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, that I think our expectations around the use of synchronous video-based tools will increase if we find ourselves in a sort of remote learning environment next year. But again, more on that shortly. Another question that we had related to any gaps or deficits that students might experience as a result of this closure period. And we recognize that that's a very real situation. One of our thoughts is that if and when students are available to us, either remotely or otherwise, that we would do some universal screening as a way to understand where students are in relation to grade level standards. And then from there, develop plans to make sure that we remediate any gaps. It's obviously something that will take place not in a day or a week or months even. That it's a long process to make sure that we can close any gaps that appear. And so this is a time, I think, where conversations between parents or caregivers and educators are more important than ever. If you feel that your child would benefit from more or different or better, I'd encourage you to talk to your children's teachers. I think there are plenty of ways that within existing assignments that educators can provide additional opportunities for challenge or encourage students to go deeper. And conversely, if the assignments that are coming home are not manageable based on whatever's happening in the household, we want our educators to know that. And so if we need to step back or rearrange the assignments to adjust for whatever is happening in the household, then we're very much prepared to do that. We know that every situation is very different, and every student, every family needs something different. And we hope that we're very responsive to that. In terms of, I was asked about student belongings. So we have started the process of letting students collect their belongings. Thank you to the elementary teachers for gathering up student belongings from cubbies and getting those ready for parent pickup, so that that process went smoothly. And at the middle level, that will happen next week. Our middle school students will have a chance to get into their lockers to grab their belongings and be sure that the plans that we're putting together, that we are touching base with town officials, and that we are working hard to ensure social distancing and making sure that students are doing this in safe ways. So, and then we'll see a comparable process at the high school. It was great to see our high school students have an opportunity to pick up their caps and gowns recently. And as part of that day, they dropped off some textbooks and also had their photos taken in their caps and gowns. That was obviously just for the seniors, but it was a really special day, and it was great to see them back in the building. Been so many great displays of Lancer pride, and the most recently the display of the student signs with their pictures on them of our graduates on the town green was just great to see, and really uplifting. And hopefully to anyone driving down Route 5, they got a sense of what we stand for here in Long Meadow Public Schools. And I appreciate the work of the parents that worked with the administration to pull that off. It was a great display. And then again, so many examples of that. The DPW recently painted a Long Meadow class of 2020 logo on the grass outside of the practice field near Grassy Gutter and Bliss Road, and it was great to see, and again, very uplifting. And just last night, if you haven't seen it, check out the last Long Meadow High concert. It was produced by our partners at LCTV, and they just did an amazing job with our music educators to put together a really special program. And I just saw it as such a gift to this community, to our students. So check it out on the Long Meadow LCTV YouTube channel. It's worth your time and very, very uplifting. So, the experience of the class of 2020 is very, very important to us. And I can assure you that our administrators are working very, very closely with town officials, including the Board of Health, to help us come up with a way to properly recognize and celebrate our graduates. There was some guidance that came out yesterday from the state, and we're in the process of going through that and unpacking it and understanding what our options are. We will have another meeting with the Board of Health next week, and so we hope we can pin down a way to commemorate this great class. They've been such great representatives of their family and their school and this community. So they're deserving of recognition, and we're being very ambitious and creative in our planning, and we'll continue to do so. So thanks to Tom Landers and his staff for their diligent efforts in that regard. It does appear that if we wait until later in the summer, that there might be some more opportunities to celebrate an outdoor, more traditional style graduation. But again, even that is not a certainty. So we'll have to work through that. And again, meeting with the Board of Health next week. So we hope to have some greater clarity by the end of next week. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the fiscal year 21 budget, meaning the budget that supports teaching and learning for the 2021 academic year, the coming school year. So you may be aware that the town recently revised its revenue projections for the coming fiscal year, and that is based on some statewide projections that indicated that local aid could be expected to decrease by as much as 14%. And then there's obviously some other sources of revenue that needed to be reforecast. So with that, the town is revisiting their budget, and the school committee and the administrative team will be challenged to revisit the school budget as well. We will need to identify $350,000 worth of reduced expenditures as a way to respond to the new revenue forecasts. I can say with certainty that Any reductions that are made will be kept far away from direct service to students. I think our job is to ensure that we're being thoughtful in the way we approach it and that we're being collaborative. The school committee has been in conversation with the select board, and we've been in touch with town officials to make sure that we understand the situation, make sure we can understand our options. A couple of specific things that I'd want to touch base with, and that is, with these reductions, I'm confident that we will not negatively impact class size. That one of the secrets to our success here in Long Meadow has been that we've always been able to create manageable and favorable class size, and I think that will be the case again in the coming school year. In fact, when the budget was developed back in January and February, we were tracking the enrollment of the rising third graders, the students that are currently in second grade and heading to third grade next year, and the school committee had allocated an additional section at Blueberry Hill to cover the increased enrollment there. Good news is that I think that will remain part of the 2021 academic year budget. And additionally, that third grade cohort was also growing at center school. Again, we're talking about the cohort going from second to third grade. And so last Tuesday night, the school committee, to its credit, voted to add another section at center school at third grade in the coming year. So again, being responsive to enrollment, despite the budget challenges, and putting us in a position that we'll be able to maintain the favorable class sizes that we've seen. So I'm really, really pleased with that. And again, I think that will be true pre-K to 12. I think that whatever reductions that we will make will not touch sort of existing direct service levels and programs. So if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to explore that with you if you want to reach out via email or phone call. The other question that we had with regard to the budget was, the status of the FY20 budget, meaning the current school year budget. And we do anticipate that there'll be some reduced costs in several expenditure lines, which will mean that there'll be a greater balance at the end of the school year, a balance that would be turned back to the town to put all of us in a better position to respond in FY21 and years beyond. So careful management of the budget right now will put us in a better position to support the fiscal impacts or to respond to the fiscal impacts that we no doubt will see. Certainly, we'll continue to monitor that with the town treasurer, with the town manager, and I know the school committee will be in regular communication with the select board as well. The other investment that we were able to make this year, largely to respond to what next year might bring, is to purchase additional Chromebooks for students. We know that if we find ourselves in a remote learning situation of some sort, that access to devices and access to technology will still be key. And so the school committee approved the purchase of Chromebooks, which would put us in a position to issue Chromebooks on a one-to-one basis in the coming school year to students in grades 1 through 12. We would explore device options for our pre-K and K students as well. So that's encouraging. And again, I think it puts us in a position to be responsive to whatever next year might bring. With regard to next year, I wanted to share some thoughts and observations. I think one of the things that we want to be in a go position based on whatever next year brings. And next year could bring a few different scenarios. It could bring an arrangement where we are exclusively remote, similar to what we have right now. It could be a hybrid arrangement where there are periods of remote learning along with periods where students are in school. or we could have a traditional opening. And I wish I had some certainty on which of those three things will happen, but we don't right now. And so our job is to sort of plan for various scenarios. And so to do that, I wanted to announce today that we will be pulling together a task force, a reopening task force, and it will engage stakeholders across the board. Will include parents and teachers, some of our high school age students, the administration, the school committee, town officials, to kind of untangle whatever guidance we receive from the Mass Department of Education, from federal sources, and also whatever guidance that we get locally. I think the job of the task force will be to help us figure out what makes sense for us operationally and educationally here in Longmeadow. The key for me right now is to be in a go position with regard to safety and health. I mean, that will be paramount. That whatever we do, we'll need to ensure the health and safety of staff and students. And so, right now, the emphasis is on identifying and purchasing ultimately equipment and supplies and material that would be used to help us open safely. And that could be PPE equipment, it could be sanitizing equipment, it could be sanitizing supplies, it could be additional equipment to allow for social distancing, it could be additional signage. So we want to make sure that we are prepared for whatever scenario emerges, and we're paying close attention, obviously, to what might come. And we've participated in some webinars that have been conducted where administrators from schools that overseas that have reopened have led, and it's been interesting to learn about their experience and to learn what protections and precautions and schedules they put in place to open, amidst this pandemic. So we'll continue to do that. So being in a go position is really critical. There are a myriad of issues that we will have to continue to pay attention to, and many of them are simple operational things, are complex operational things, transportation, food service. Those are things that we'll have to make sure that we can deliver in safe and healthy ways. So, but importantly for this presentation is to talk a little bit about remote learning next year. And we have learned quite a bit in a short amount of time of what works and what doesn't work, and appreciate the regular and ongoing feedback from staff and parents and from the administration, and the regular adjustments and course corrections that have been made. So I think next year, if we find ourselves in a remote environment, or if it's some sort of hybrid arrangement, and let me pause on that just for a minute. When I say potentially a hybrid arrangement, we've seen models and projections for hybrid arrangements that could involve half-day schedules where some students are with us in the morning and others are with us in the afternoon. We've seen projections and models where some students are with us for a week and at home another week, or alternating days. So there's a number of different ways that you can achieve that sort of hybrid arrangement, where some of it is education happening in a bricks and mortar environment, and some of it's education that's happening in a remote environment. The other part of that sort of hybrid approach might be trying to limit the amount of mixing that happens among staff and students, and to as a way to limit transmission. And so that could mean that students are assigned to a particular teacher, a particular classroom for more times than they're used to. So again, a lot of this is just our best our best informed thoughts at this point based on the models and projections that we have seen and read about and the professional development that we have taken part in. There, again, I just want to emphasize there has been no guidance yet on what reopening and reconstitution looks like from the state of Massachusetts. There's the CDC has been slowly releasing some information, and other states have some plans that we're looking at, but we need to really wait for specific guidance. But again, be prepared for any of those three scenarios: again, fully remote, a hybrid arrangement, or a more traditional opening. So to share some thoughts on remote learning and the adjustments that we would want to make next year. Again, we've learned a lot about what best remote learning, teaching and learning practice looks like. And we would want to apply those lessons and apply the feedback that we've gotten over the last couple of months. I think a few things jump out just generally is that we recognize that we will need next year sort of tighter time on learning requirements for students. We would need tighter time on teaching requirements for staff. We would want to make sure we have clear and required expectations on the use of video-based instruction. And then finally, we would want to make sure that we're committed to delivering learning using as few platforms as possible. Sort of platform consistency is something that we've heard from parents, and we would want to make sure that there's some consistency across the district. We've had a lot of luck with a lot of good experience with Google Classroom, and that could provide the consistency that we're looking for. So those are some of the issues that the task force and our administrative team could work on. With regard to the synchronous video-based supports, I think we recognize that it heightens engagement. It is a great way to support students academically and social emotionally, and yet I also know that there are plenty of times where recorded video works as well or better. So we want to make sure that, I think at the end of the day, that we have, like I said, sort of tighter time on learning and time on teaching requirements, and we think that will those are some of the directions that we would want to go to make sure that we're responding to the lessons that we've learned during this remote learning period. So those are some of the things that were on my mind. You can stay tuned for additional information on the budget. We expect to bring a recommendation to the school committee at their next meeting. And then we will stay tuned for whatever guidance might emerge from the state and try to be as responsive to that as we possibly can. And then also this community can stay tuned for additional updates on the LHS graduation. Those are some of the things that are important to us right now. So thank you for time. Thank you for tuning in. And again, I hope everyone has a wonderful, happy Memorial Day weekend. It looks like the weather is going to cooperate for us. So enjoy. Thanks so much.